a certain amount of debt can be really helpful to a business to accelerate growth, whether it's the opportunity to buy inventory at a discount, whether it's the opportunity to take additional space to grow your restaurant or retail footprint. You can do that when you have enough access to a certain amount of working capital.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ashoka Maimona. I'm the host of today's interview with Smarter Loans. Our guest today is David Souaid, the Chief Revenue Officer of OnDeck Canada, an online small business lending company with an international footprint. And I understand that OnDeck Canada uses cutting-edge technology and is passionate about enhancing access to credit when it comes to Main Street. So really enhancing the borrowing experience for SMBs. So we're very excited to have you here today, David. We'll get right into it so our viewers can take away as much as possible from our chat. So let's start with you. Tell us about your professional and your entrepreneurial experience, how you got into business financing, how you came to be part of OnDeck Canada.
Great. Well, first of all, Mashoka, thanks for having me. It's a great opportunity to talk about OnDeck and our story. I started in 1999, 2000 in the e-commerce payment processing space. And I think at the time it was, an opportunity to work with small business who had retail presence, but were looking to move online, and really learned and understood the needs of small business, as well as the needs of from a cash flow perspective, understood the payment rails, and then moved on to understanding their cash flow needs, which is really how we got into the lending business. In 2008, during the financial crisis, banks really restricted access to working capital. And at the time, they treated small business customers like retail customers. So it leveraged their personal credit score. You had to walk into a branch to get financing, and it could take weeks. So we really felt that we needed to solve for that problem. And that's how Mercantile was born. We built an online lending platform that effectively allowed you to go online in a fast and convenient way to apply for a loan. And here we are.
So your journey started with OnDeck Canada, or were you in the industry previously as well?
Yeah, so I started Mercantile Advance. So Mercantile was born in around 2008. And it was with that need to solve or desire to solve that problem of getting fast and convenient access to working capital for small business. And so we started Mercantile, built the platform over several years, grew it, I think, really well for many years. And then a few years ago, OnDeck approached us about merging. And OnDeck was a company in the US that we had modeled ourselves very much after, really admired their approach to small business lending. They were looking for local management in Canada, presence in Quebec. We were looking for financial resources and the experience of their technology platform, which had done about $12 billion of loans at the time. So the marriage made a lot of sense, and it's been great ever since.
Mm-hmm. And tell us then about OnDeck Canada's experience. You told us a little bit about the origin story, but perhaps a little bit more about how it works, what sets you apart from competitors, and what you would want clients to take away.
I think what we've tried to do is build an online application process that is fast, convenient, and as little friction as possible, because one thing we understand about our small business clients is that they're very busy. They juggle a lot of things. They're managing, their own customers and sales. They're managing inventory. They're trying to manage cash flow. So really understanding, I think, the needs of small business and how busy they are, and trying to tailor our onboarding process to be as simple and secure as possible, customizable as possible, is really at the core of what we do. So I think what separates us is we try to treat each customer in almost a personalized way and really understand their needs and try to meet those needs with the right credit product for their business. We have, different products. Some are seasonal based, some are more for steady cash flow businesses. So again, servicing them in a way that's more personalized and customized.
That's perfect. In terms of what's next for you and the team, I imagine that you likely had plans to go ahead and unveil, but I'm sure the pressures of COVID, which we'll talk about later during the chat, might have caused the team to pivot. So if there's any announcements that are coming up, any offerings, new innovations that you want to highlight.
What I would say is that, where we started out of a previous financial crisis, today we're looking at a post-pandemic world to evolve our business, much like our small and medium-sized business customers have had to evolve. Their acceleration to digital is one that we've tried to support through COVID by continuing to fund, by working with them on repayment terms, and really continuing to innovate to make sure that in a post-COVID world, our products meet their needs. And so what I could tell you is we're working on expanding financial services for small and medium sized businesses, because I think what you see is more and more merchants are looking for more and more products that they can benefit from with providers such as OnDeck. So I think more to come on that, but we certainly understand that we need to continue to work on innovations around small business needs around financial services.
I think that's a good segue. I was going to leave it towards the end, the interview, but perhaps it's not the best to end on a gloomy note. You did mention post pandemic. So it's not necessarily gloomy per se. I mean, I think there's a lot of innovations, like you mentioned, David, that have been coming up. What have you seen on the ground? I know that 2020 was a really tough year. 2021 is, I think there's a lot of hope in the air. You mentioned Quebec and Ontario as well with the third wave. I think there's optimism. What are your thoughts and how small businesses, irrespective of industry they're in, what hope is there? What optimism is there in terms of tangible offerings that OnDeck Canada and your counterparts can help enhance the working capital experience or the borrowing experience so that really the backbone of our economy, small business, can thrive in this year and the next?
Yeah, so look, I think there's no question that it's been a challenging year for all business, but we do see positive signs ahead. And we do see many of our customers who were either very advanced in their digitization process, or those who might have been a little bit slower but have now accelerated and adapted and transitioned their business to the post-COVID world. So we are optimistic as things are opening. We are optimistic to see the progress of many of our customers adapt and transform their own businesses. And so really for us, it's been about trying to work with them during this period of time, this challenging period of time, to make sure that, one, they had the resources to assist in their digitization process, to work with them to continue actually funding during COVID. Many alternative lenders really stopped, and we wanted to make sure we were there for them during COVID, to continue to fund and to change, work with them on repayment terms, lengthening out, et cetera. So really trying to work with them through COVID. And as we come out, being able to offer new credit products, as I alluded to earlier, and new financial service products to help, again, transform their business in a way that supports their needs moving forward. So there's a lot we're working on. Can't necessarily talk about now, but there's a lot we're working on to really be at the forefront of those small business needs. Things like, we just talked about cash flow calculators and many areas around financial services that I think these small businesses have not had access to, that I think be a natural partner on.
Definitely. And I think to switch gears a little bit and tap into your arsenal of tips and advice for small businesses. So let's start with some general advice for small business owners who are looking to grow their business, or perhaps even people looking to get into the small business world, people who are trying to be entrepreneurs for the first time. What is your advice?
I try to focus it to three areas because there's so much we've learned as entrepreneurs in building a business, but I really try to focus it to three areas. I think the first is focus on the problem that you're solving and be obsessive and relentless in your pursuit of solving that problem. And I think at OnDeck, when we first began, we were obsessed about making sure that our application process was fast, convenient, had minimal friction, because we knew that that was a barrier to working capital access for small business. Two, really make sure that you hire complementary people who bring around strengths that you may not have. My partner, Harley Greenspoon, he brought finance, legal, risk, knowledge that frankly I didn't have. So, and as we built out the team, adding that complementary nature, building a company culture is, I think, critically important. Our company culture that was built over time, I think, helped us grow our business and be resilient throughout this long period of time. And third, make sure you have enough access to equity and working capital early on. I think if there's one area that I, in hindsight, would have liked to have seen us do more of is raise more equity, make sure we had the firepower to execute on our business plan early on. And I think making sure that you have the right people, you have the right amount of capital, and that you have the right focus would be the three areas that I would recommend to small business owners or entrepreneurs getting started to make sure they have in place.
That sounds fantastic. I think that's the recipe for success for many of us in life generally, surrounding yourself with great people and having the capital to make purchases that would really maximize. So I think that's advice that's also true in life. What are some perhaps misconceptions or things about business loans that your average borrower isn't aware of that perhaps you can offer some advice so they can really maximize their potential, the potential of the loan, perhaps in terms of how the loan is used or what kind of financing an entrepreneur should access or try and obtain? What are your thoughts on that?
I do think there is still a bit of a stigma around taking on debt or loans. I think that's changing over the years. I do think that many small businesses understand the value of working capital to help them grow their business. And so I think a certain amount of debt can be really helpful to a business to accelerate growth, whether it's the opportunity to buy inventory at a discount, whether it's the opportunity to take additional space to grow your restaurant or retail footprint. You can do that when you have enough access to a certain amount of working capital. And we have examples of customers we've worked with over the years who, given an opportunity through access to working capital, to do exactly those things, either expand footprint or grow their business at the right time when they wouldn't have otherwise been able to. So at some point, we can talk about some of those examples, which I think are interesting.
If we could talk about those examples, I don't know if you can share specific stories. I mean, I know there's confidentiality issues, but obviously you've worked with many different types of business owners and people over the years. So share some of those highlights. We'd love to hear those.
Yeah, there's always two that sort of come to mind, and they're two very different stories. So I like to highlight both because I think they reflect different types of business and opportunities. So the first is a restaurant in the Hamilton area. It was a 10-seat restaurant, constantly booked. You couldn't get in. The opportunity came for that merchant to take the space next door to basically triple in size, but didn't have the capital to do it. And so we were able to work with them to get them a term loan to take on that space. As well, they wanted to launch a catering business and a takeout delivery service, which they were able to do. And it had tripled their business within 6 to 12 months. And we've had a long-standing relationship with that customer. So again, access to capital at the right time, being opportunistic, I think worked really well for this customer and has gone on to do really great things. The second is warehousing client who effectively was in the pick, packing, and shipping business for many retailers. So they would wholesale and they would pick, pack, and ship. And about 2.5 years ago, before the COVID boom to e-commerce really accelerated things, they were looking to invest in technology to integrate to Amazon's marketplace, Facebook's marketplace, but they didn't necessarily have the access to capital to build those technology integrations and build out their warehouse. So we were able to work with them and provide them the work capital they need to invest. And early on, I think it was a bit challenging. And certainly now they're reaping the benefits of that work to make it as automated as possible. To an order comes in on Amazon and that order goes out same day, picked, packed, and shipped. So two different examples, but I think examples of the many different types of businesses that we like to work with to help them in their growth plans.
No, definitely. Thank you for sharing those stories. In terms of, I guess, more generally, being immersed in the small business world, you see a lot, you meet a lot of people. In terms of trends and innovations in this scene, let's limit it to the business lending scene. What have you seen in the past year and a year and a half?
I think two or three trends that you're seeing emerging. I do think line of credit is one where there's a renewed interest in line of credit, particularly because of the flexibility that line of credit brings to the table. I think invoice financing would be a second innovation that, customers are again using more digital services to send out invoices. The ability to finance the receivables on those invoices would be two. And I do think around the areas of other financial services, I'll call it, be it card, business card, credit card, corporate card, you are seeing quite a bit of innovation in that space as well. So those would be the three innovations that I think small business customers are looking for and you're seeing in the market.
And in terms of COVID related pressures, have you noticed different types of customers propping up demand in different sectors or industries?
We've definitely noticed a shift in the demand for our products during COVID. Again, there are industries that I think have done fairly well. Those in, let's call it the home area. Many people are home more, traveling less travel and hospitality, more related to home. Certainly more related to construction, building supplies, warehousing, inventory management. All of that, those areas, I think we've seen a significant rise in demand from. Obviously, retail merchants moving to the e-commerce space, that is clearly an area we're seeing, tremendous growth from.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of when you're chatting with clients, customers, OnDeck Canada has been at the forefront of really leading the digital online experience. But how much room would you say is there to further enhance or improve this experience? What are customers telling you? I know the time period to fill the application and get the money in your hands has really, really shrunk over the last few years, but you guys have been around for a number of years. What is there left to really improve this experience?
I think there's a few. I think the first, open banking, is one area that, as it's emerging, will be a way to reduce even more friction for online lending providers to be able to get access to data. I think the more data providers we get access to, and we continue to do that, the less information we need from our small business customer to provide. We just need their consent and we obtain it. And I think the third thing you will see more of is really embedded finance, that notion of pushing offers to customers using the data and using their consent so that it's as little friction as possible, because the information we need to underwrite and adjudicate is available to us. And then we can push those offers to customers in whichever financial system, payment processing system they're using to be able to accept working capital on their terms and on their time. So I think those are the three areas that I think can help us enhance even further the online application process.
Oh, that's great. And in terms of evolution, let's take a trip down memory lane. You mentioned that you've been in this industry for over 2 decades now. OnDeck Canada has been at least OnDeck Canada for about 7 years. How much has the industry, the lending, the financing, businesses industry changed in, if you want to look back 20 years, but primarily in the last decade? Because at least as far as my business coverage goes, it seems like things have moved really fast in the last decade. So if you could speak a little to that and perhaps even what's driving this change.
I think it has changed quite a bit. When we first started and we would call customers, the notion of someone calling to offer financing or to market to customers to go online to apply for financing, I think was somewhat foreign. They were very focused on, banks and traditional lenders. So again, I think as we look to solve that problem and customers got more and more comfortable with players and industry providers offering our services in a solid, convenient way, acceptance grew over time. And then what really started to happen was a real focus on making that process even better and better and using the technology and data to do so. So I think even in the last 5 years, you're seeing a much more significant focus on leveraging data, machine learning, artificial intelligence, personalized offers, and flexibility, really putting that power in the hand of the merchant to say, you know what, I want 12 months or I want 15 months. How much would that cost? Okay, you know what, I can afford a little more. Let me expand my term or shorten my term. So I think all those things have gone into really making this process much more convenient, flexible for the customer who are, as I said earlier, they're busy and they need to make this easy and fast and convenient. And so access to data, leveraging that information to make those types of offers and then putting the power in the hands of the small business customer to make that final decision is really, I think, the evolution and really the next step of where this is going. We're getting to a phase where it's maturing. And I think what you'll see now is how do we make this even better for small business customers now that we're sort of at a place where they've come to accept the alternative lending world.
And it's interesting because with OnDeck Canada having counterparts operating in the US and Australia, I think it gives you a really good vantage point to compare the different jurisdictions. A lot of Canadians like to compare ourselves to Americans, but perhaps it's not the right jurisdiction to compare. I've often thought Australia or the UK might be better, more analogous comparisons. But in your experience, when you're chatting with your colleagues down south or in Australia, what are some things you notice that's different about the Canadian borrower?
I would say that, again, you're right. We have two vantage points in our OnDeck Australia business. I think is a lot more similar to the Canadian business than it is the American business. In the US customer, there's a lot more, frankly, providers. There's very, very much a focus around the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP program over the last year. And frankly, they've come back much quicker for a variety of reasons, vaccines, et cetera. So the US market right now is, I think, very different to Canada for a variety of reasons. And it always has been. The small business customer in the US has a different mentality around banking. Canada has the big six banks. We like our banking networks. In the US, there's 15,000 banks. So very different financial services market, I think, to in the US. So a lot more like Australia. And when we talk to our Australian colleagues, I think their focus they too have now come out of COVID a little bit more quickly than Canada has. And their focus right now is really being there for the small business customer who is now emerging and needing that support. So very different markets, very different situations as we emerge from COVID, but a lot more similar to Australia than the US for sure.
And would you say, I mean, oftentimes people talk about the over reliance on our big six banks, and that's perhaps one of the reasons it's taken Canada and Canadians longer to get accustomed to more innovative digital type lending. But that's really shifted in the past year. Would you agree?
Oh, very much it shifted. I think we were on that path, and the world of COVID has very much accelerated that path, both for the banks who've begun to focus on digitizing their processes maybe more quickly than they otherwise would have, but definitely for the alternative lenders and alternative payment providers. Merchants have come to expect incredible customer experience, things at their fingertips, ease of use. And they've come to accept that in retail, in all their experiences. And so, as small business owners, they expect nothing less as well. So, it has shifted, I think, the buying experience for all types of products and services.
Definitely. And we began our conversation talking a little bit about the COVID related pressures on the economy and on small businesses. What have you and OnDeck Canada, being there to support small businesses this past year, what have you learned from this experience?
I think we've learned how to ensure that we evolve and adapt and be a resilient business as well. And I think we've learned that we need to listen to our small business clients, be there for them, make sure that we have the right services and products for them. And lastly, just again, understanding their needs. So when they looked for some additional term, restructuring of payments, really being there for them. And then lastly, what resources could we provide to assist them in the digital shift? I think those are some of the things we've really tried to understand. And then lastly, what I would say is, again, our own focus back to customer experience, making sure we've got the best customer experience for our clients, current and future.
In terms of challenges, we mentioned COVID specifically, but what are some other challenges that you've noticed businesses are facing when they're trying to get approved for credit or trying to simply obtain credit?
I think today, in part, it's the uncertain and I'll call it choppy nature of sales over the past year and a half. So I think for some customers, they were closed for a period of time. And so when you're financing based on historical information and then trying to project out, it makes it difficult for lenders to be able to do what we traditionally done, which is leveraging that data to make loan offers. So I do think for small business customers who had a bit of stop start or have had a slower ramp as they've transitioned, it's made it more challenging to get access to capital. But I think that's starting to change as we reopen. The other thing I do see quite a bit is the cost of raw materials have gone up for many of our clients, and that's having obviously challenges for them in their business. So I think those would be the two that stand out.
And what would your advice be to business owners who are struggling with those challenges right now?
Look, I don't know that, everyone is different. What I would say is we've all got to sort of get through this period of time, get to a place of hopefully a bit more consistency and work through the challenges. We're all in the same boat in many ways. And so let's just keep pushing through and to the other side.
Yeah, no, that's terrific. Thank you so much, David. I know we've covered a lot of ground. Was there anything that perhaps we didn't touch on or that you want to elaborate on?
I think I'm really optimistic for the future of both small business lending and small business in general. I know there's been a lot of challenges over the past year and a half, but I think as we emerge, we'll emerge stronger, more resilient, and having adapted to what I think that customers want in the future, which is great experiences. And so if there's a positive to come out of a challenging time, I think that's it. And I think all businesses have had to confront that, and it'll be a good thing in the future. So really appreciated having me on today and the opportunity to talk about both OnDeck's story and our experiences as relates to small business lending. So really appreciate
No, thank you for making the time, David. Really appreciate it. And also, if our viewers want to learn more about OnDeck Canada, where should they go?
it. You can visit ondeck.ca and everything is there.
Perfect. And if they have questions filling out the application, I imagine that they can call up some of your agents and get more of a one-on-one experience, I imagine.
Absolutely. There's click to chat, there's call, and certainly email. So
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again, David.
thanks for
And
showing up.
enjoy this beautiful weather.
You too.